Hey friends, what's up? How are you doing? Thanks so much for joining me in today's video. We are going to be diving into newest makeup palette by McGrath. We have her Celestial Ethnicity, I think that's how you say it. Very excited to show you firsthand swatches. I am going to be creating these two eye looks that I have, and yeah, I'm going to just show you the palette, what it looks like, my thoughts and first impressions on it. If you're excited and this is your first time here, I am Gigi. I love to do high-end and luxury makeup reviews. If you love that kind of content, go ahead and click the red button that says subscribe, and also come to my Instagram because over there I do keep you posted on the newest and the latest. Without further ado, let's start. Alright you guys, so let's get started. And this is makeup palette by McGrath. Just released one last year. We have volume 2 right here, and she only released this palette last week when she did the drop for her holidays. I'm assuming the rest will follow this week sometime. But she only released the palette. I did paid expedited shipping. I'm in Canada, and that's how I got it so fast. It retails for 105 Canadian dollars. I'll leave the US right there. And this is a first look at the palette. When you first receive it, this is the outer packaging, cardboard packaging, and then you get the exact same thing in the inside. At the back of the palette you get all the shade and their names, which is actually quite neat, so that's really nice. At the front you get the name here, and these logos are a little bit raised. This year's packaging, I did want to mention, is a little bit thicker than last year's. We have last year's right here, so we can see that the pink packaging is a little bit thinner. They both have a magnetic closure, and they both have this ribbon here that may be annoying to some. You can always just cut it out if you don't want it. The annoying part is that it shuts on you when you're using it, and then you get a really nice size mirror. If you're doing your makeup like this, it is perfection. It is quite bad. Yeah. But anyhow, this is the palette. Within this palette we get 18 shades, and we have 5 different finishes. Within the palette we get 5 luxe finishes, extractors and highlights, a creamy texture, effortless blending, one stroke color release, extreme adherence. You can use these wet or dried. You get 18 shadows, which gives you 1.1 gram of product or 0.04 ounces of product. We get a 12-month shelf life. And this palette was made in the USA. Some of the finishes are satin shimmers, a 24K dual chrome sparkles, foil metallic, velvet matte, and iridescent sparkles. I also wanted to point out that since last year, I know a lot of people was complaining about how cheap this packaging looked like. If you compare it to her mothership palettes, this is not as expensive. So I guess it makes sense that she gives you a cheaper packaging for cheaper. But this year's, I think she did an upgrade. So last year's, if you take a look at the inside, this is sort of like a cardboard material. You do get a sort of like a magnetic closure in here as well. But this year's, if you look at the inside, we get, first of all, we get her logo in the middle right there, and then we get sort of like an acrylic inside here. So I think it's still an upgrade. I think that's why she made it a little bit thicker, and I'm not complaining. This looks much more pat McGrath quality. I actually really like this packaging. Again, if you're bothered by the ribbons, just cut them off. I don't really care. I'll just leave them like this. But yeah, this is a look at the packaging. Now I am going to let you watch the 2 looks that I created. I did a talk through tutorial, and then when we come back we're gonna do some swatches, and we're gonna do just a final thoughts. So let's get to the fun part. Let's start off playing with these shadows. I start off with this shade here at top. We get 1, 2, 3, 4 mattes to play with in this palette. I previously prepped my eyelids with Mario's medium palette to prime palette. So let's go ahead and apply this, mainly concentrating the color in my outer V and just bringing what's left to the front. And you can see this blended in like 2 seconds. Very nice and creamy shade. Okay, now I want to go ahead and apply this shade here, right out there, and I am going to apply with my finger. I like to apply these shades with my fingers. This is beautiful. This one doesn't look like it's one of her crumbly shades. She's gonna have one or two in here, but this isn't one of them. This is a beautiful pink. And if you happen to have her one, of course you can use it. You can take advantage and then not mess your face makeup if you already did that. And then it's gonna make the shadows a little bit more you know, impactful, if that's what you're looking for anyways. I'm just tapping this color like so, and this is very pretty. I'm going to take this Referal 28, just a tiny brush, and I'm going to actually wet it a little bit so that I can be precise and be clean in my application here. My inner corner, I'm going to apply this one, which is also another pinky shade. These two actually look very similar to each other. Not quite what I was looking for. And I'm going to apply something at top. So I'm going to wet this tiny brush by Referal 03, and I'm going to highlight my inner corner with this shade right here. That's it. It's beautiful, look at that. I'm gonna take the same matte color that I applied at the beginning, and I'm just gonna pack it my outer V and just blend all my edges. Applying a little bit more at top with my finger. For my lower lash, I'm going to apply this matte shade here, just sort of like a, and I have a lot of fallout from that pink shade. So again, if you have her ODYSSEY one, I do highly recommend you use it, or you wet your shadows, because I didn't wet mine and I made a mess. So I'm gonna have to go after with a little bit of concealer. Let me try to fix this and I'll be okay, good as new. So I just pretty much dust off, you know, the fallout. Then I went ahead and applied concealer, and it's all good to go. So I'm applying that brown one more time close to my lower lash. And I'm going to take the same color that I apply here in my inner corner. I'm going to take it here to my lower lash. And this inner corner shade that I'm using is definitely one of those crumbly shades that I was telling you about. So you want to ensure that you wet your brush. And look at how pretty It's quite intense. Beautiful. Okay, for the next look, we have to use the green, right? We have to. So I'm gonna go into this shade right here, which is a matte shade, and I'm gonna apply it in my outer V and just run it through my crease. Okay, and then I am going to apply this shade with my finger, like this. Ooh. I'm going to pat all over my lid. And then for my outer V, I think I want to apply this shade here, which is this dark shade right here. I'm going to try to be very careful and pat it. That's a beautiful shade. It reminds me of something that I've used from Natasha's Metropolis palette. I'm gonna go ahead and wet a brush. This could get messy, and I wanna, yeah, this is one of those very, very crumbly shades. And then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to apply that green. And for my inner corner, I'm going to apply this shade. Looks like a lilac shade. Just to highlight. Ooh, pretty. I'm gonna take it on my lower lash. I'm gonna take the darkest brown here, and I'm going to apply it in my lower lash. And that green shade has a ton of fallout again. I knew it, and even though I wet my brush, I still got some fallout, so keep that in mind. I'm gonna use the brown, and I'm going to just deepen these and blend the edges so it doesn't look so harsh. So I am going to apply liner, lashes, and I'll be right back for some swatches and some final thoughts. So as you can see, the two looks that I created are very, very festive and beautiful. A lot of sparkles, and they're just really, really pretty. I wanted to do something a little bit more, you know, wearable, and then something more out there. Of course, I needed to use that green shade. I feel like that lilac shade combined with the green and then to the deepest green, it is very stunning. I think it's a beautiful look. Last year's palette I really liked. I had no complaints. I remember liking the palette, reviewing the palette, and I continue to use it to this day. Every time I think about a purple eye look that I want to create, this is what I think of, and I really like it. I know in these palettes you don't get any of her special shades at all, but she's giving you different finishes. She's giving you creamy mattes, 24K finish, just giving you metallics, and just 5 different finishes from her line, which I think is really nice. You get some very crumbly shades, but you just have to be careful with something like that. You just have to do your face last. Fair warning, I had to fix both my under eyes with both of my looks because it just has a ton of fallout. If you have her wand, then you can just skip that. I didn't want to use the wand. I really wanted to just use the shadows so you can see them and just show you that you don't need the wand. If you don't have it, you don't need it. But I do love it though, I have to admit. So when it comes to this palette and the color story, I think it's a little bit of a random one. I don't feel like there is much cohesion in here. She just sort of like threw some beautiful shades in a palette and she gave it to us. I'm not complaining. If I have to rate my most unique palette, this is gonna be it, but truly, because I have nothing in my collection so random as this. In here, as I mentioned, if I want a purple, I think of this palette. If I want some randomness in my eyeshadow, then I'm gonna be picking this up. Even though this is very random, as I mentioned, I still feel like it is beautiful. It is unique. I feel like you get neutral tones in here, so this is much more wearable than last year. So now let's move on to the light swatches. I do want to do some light swatches because those are fun. So let's begin with the top shade, which is called Saturn Sunset, and this is a beautiful creamy matte that I used for my first look. Next up, we have the shade Rose Venus, which is a beautiful metallic rose gold shade. Look at that. So that's that. Next up, of course, it's gotta give us a gold, right? It's not, you can never miss one of her golds in her palette. So this is called a Gold Galaxy. Next up, we have one of other crumbly shade, but look at that sparkle, all that glitter. This is a beautiful, stunning shade. I used that all like in my outer V in my second look, and I really like it. But again, it made a little bit of a mess, so keep that in mind. This is called No Air Moon. Next up, we have Bronze Nova. So it looks like Bronze Nova is also really pretty, not as intense as the second shade. And then last for that road, we have the cocoa shade, which is called Nocturne. And look how that matte just swatch, like it's no joke, extremely pigmented. So here we have the first road. Next up, we have Galactic Glow, which is the shade that I use in my inner corner, and this is a beautiful shade. It's one of those very crumbly shade. Again, you can totally use that shade as a highlighter if you wanted to. I think it's beautiful. Then we have Sun Rose Amber, which is sort of like a peanut color, very warm tone brown. Luxe, which I didn't get to try, but look at that. It is also a beautiful shade. I took off the bracelet. Next up, we have Lunar Haze, I think it's called, yeah, which is a beautiful lilac shade. I think it was beautiful for my inner corner. It is not one of those crumbly shades, but it is very pigmented. Next up, we have this matte shade, which is called Electric. And then Heavenly Body, and this is Heavenly Body. I feel like Heavenly Body and the second shade, which I use both on my looks, are very similar. So keep that in mind. I don't know. This is not extremely pigmented. I think she could have done something, I don't know, a different route of pink, because this and the second look very similar to each other. Then we have Bronze Eclipse. Ooh, look at that yummy bronze shade. Love that shade. Next up we have Solar Flare, which is not very pigmented. It's one of those very subtle shades. But you can totally use these as a highlighter. I can see as a, you know, as a face highlighter. Next up we have Nirvana. Oof, that really reminds me of Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. Then we have Corrupt Copper. Beautiful warm tone copper shade. Then we have two more, which is Palladium. So Palladium looks like, ooh, this is a beautiful shade. It is sort of like a cool tone platinum shade. I find it very unique. And then last but not least, the Citrine Envy, which is one of the most tactile shades here in the palette. Look at that. It is beautiful. Pigmentation is no issue. You can see how random this color story is a very random, but nonetheless it's beautiful. You get some warm tones in here, you get some cool tones in here, you get a really fun mix of colors in here. As I was watching, you know, her Mothership Utopian palette came to mind because of this really bright color, which we also get it right here. So I am going to do a little swatch at top just to see, but they're not very similar. Actually, the one in Utopian is a little bit more coral and this one is a little bit more pink in the new palette. I also thought of this beautiful pink shade here in the Utopian palette, just this bottom shade right here, but it leans a little bit more cool tone than the two pinks that I swatched in her newer palette. So not really. Thought I'll mention the similarities just in case you had them in mind as well. Remember, these palettes, you can use them as blushes, as highlighters. I didn't do that. I always do that, but I don't know why I didn't this time. I already had blush, but let's go ahead and use that bright shade because you just need a really tiny, you know, brush that is gonna fit in there. And they, like, look at that, they give you a ton. They give you a ton of pigmentation, and they just really work well as a blush. So I really like that about all her palettes. So look at that. It is a beautiful tone of coral, and I think it really goes well with the palette, the theme, and everything. If you wanted a little bit of highlighter, even though I'm already wearing one that I'm obsessed with, which is by the new highlighter by LYS. I'll link it below. I still wanted to try this one, which is the shade that I said, you know, maybe it's too subtle to be eyeshadow. So I'm just gonna do it right there. Yeah, this is a beautiful tone of highlighter. It is peachy, like peachy pink, which is my favorite kind of highlighter. I know I already had highlighter underneath, but I just, you know, I wanted to sort of show you just in case you're curious about it. Final thoughts, I am very happy with the quality of the palette. I feel like even though I keep repeating myself, I feel like it's a very random color story, I still feel like it is a beautiful. You get a ton to choose from when you're doing your makeup. I feel like both eye looks that I created looked beautiful. All shades performed very nicely. I didn't have, you know, any problems with any of them at all, and I think this is beautiful. Is this for everyone? Probably not. This is gonna be for the adventurous makeup wearer. In my opinion, this is not gonna be everyone's cup of tea. Very happy with the palette, very happy with the, you know, variety of finishes that she's put into this palette. Very happy with everything. Everything just swatched beautiful. Everything on my eyes just applied beautiful. Again, I repeat, ton of fallout, so make sure you wet your brushes, or you apply glitter glue, or you just do your face makeup last, and then you'll be safe. I feel like this for the holidays is very fun. This is gonna be complimentary palette maybe for someone that don't wear a ton of, you know, colorful looks. This is gonna be something fun, you know, to reach for when you want a pop of color. Again, I feel like this is my most unique palette to date because of the randomness of the color story, but I still feel like everything works. Even though everything seemed very random to me in my brain, when I try to create a look, it still made sense. Somehow it still did, so I am happy that it did. I'm happy with the palette. I think it's beautiful. If you want to win one of these palettes, do go ahead and click on my giveaway. I'm going to link it above. I am giving away a few goodies from Charlotte Tilbury. This is my 5K giveaway, which I am very excited about. So go ahead and click on that video, follow the rules, and you may be, you know, eligible to win this palette. So anyways, you guys, let me know in the comments, what do you think of this palette? What do you think of the two eye looks that I created? What do you think of the color story? Which of the two looks you like the best? Any comments, anything at all, just drop it below. Thanks so much, you guys, for your love and support. And don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.